Turning now to House Energy and Commerce Committee, on Monday they announced that they would mark up the Kids Online Safety Act, otherwise known as KOSA. Later today, the committee could vote to send it to the floor of the full House for final passage. This is a significant bill that will impact all Americans, not just children and teens. These laws mandate the largest collection of sensitive personal information we have ever seen. Here to discuss this is Director of Public Affairs at NetChoice, Rob Winterton. Rob, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me here today, Stacy. I really appreciate talking about this important issue.
I'm so glad you're here because I don't see this story getting enough attention. I mean, obviously, you have the mortgage rates dropping, you have the Israelis attacking Hezbollah using a pager, exploding pagers. And then you also have the assassination attempt and the continued appearances by both candidates. So there's a whole lot of room, and it is full of those stories, almost nothing about KOSA. So tell us exactly what this is and why we should care about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to explain some of what you're saying, KOSA is a well-named bill, right? It suggests that it's trying to do something that, who among us could oppose trying to keep kids safe on the internet, especially with everything that's been going on in modern times. But that's the exact problem. It purports to help kids, but it doesn't really. It's actually, as you mentioned, it creates huge cybersecurity risks. It really makes things very concerning in that area. Already, families are paying the cost of about $1 billion every year for identity theft happening against children. And one of the big issues with KOSA is because what it tries to do is force social media companies to verify the ages of all their users, not just minors, but all of their users. That means that these social media sites could be turned into honeypots for hackers. So, online criminals looking to exploit Americans while they use the internet are going to have a real field day if this law passes and it forces these companies to collect so much sensitive information. It could be driving licenses, could be passports, maybe it's social security numbers. We hear a lot today about sensitive information getting leaked online. We do not need the US government passing laws that make that way worse, while really doing nothing to actually materially make a difference to helping parents navigate the tricky online space and how they can best keep their families safe on the internet.
So what is the justification for collecting this large amount of data?
So fundamentally, the bill aims to try and control the internet experience of families and especially minors. And, basically tries to force social media companies to help them in that effort. It does so by, forcing them to try and verify the ages of users. Of course, your average social media company doesn't have that ability unless they can force you, the user trying to use their service, to upload this kind of information. And that's what makes things so worrying here, is that, at the moment, there might be other situations where, as consumers, we might need to prove our age before purchasing something. It's very different to going in the store and buying a product than having to basically show your license to be able to speak online.
Yeah, that is interesting. So, right now, if you want to be verified on the social media giants, you have to provide your driver's license, and they match that with information that they have. They verify that it's an actual document. They are able to do that using their online scanning software, and then you're able to be verified. But most social media users are not verified. So it's a huge expansion of the keeping of that data. And what I've seen is everyone is subject to data breaches. And it's not just big giants like Sony. That was an embarrassing breach for them. But that was years ago. Everyone has breaches. The grocery store. We got a notification from AT&T earlier this year that all of the data on our phones that they store was literally lifted. And then you had that big data breach that happened a few weeks back. It was the federal government who had a breach, and all of that data of all of the citizens of the country was lifted by hackers. So, I mean, I almost feel like it's a joke for them to say they would pass legislation requiring people to submit their data when no one has been able to keep it safe.
Yeah, I think that's so true. It's absolutely ridiculous to mandate, use the law to mandate such huge sensitive data collection, especially when that's not really what's needed to help families navigate the complicated and sometimes dangerous online experience, especially for their kids. To do that, NetChoice has actually put forward a proposal called Shield, covers a bunch of different areas, but pertinent to this discussion, it's about educating and empowering families to be able to use the tools that are already out there to their maximum efficacy so that they can keep their kids safe, so that they can make decisions of what sort of content, what sort of media and speech they want their minors experiencing online, because fundamentally, that is a personal family decision. One thing that is not being brought up a lot about this law, and thankfully, we've really trying to be pushing lawmakers to consider this. This is an unprecedented expansion of power for the government to control what families can see online. Not only are they going to force people to pass over sensitive information about themselves and their children, but they're also going to be telling social media sites and the nation what is appropriate for minors to see online and what isn't. And I really don't think that we should be trusting Washington, D.C. bureaucrats with that decision, when really that decision should be up to individual families. Different families and different teens have different needs. And it's important that that's why parents have rights, right? They need to be able to address those individual needs and do what their families need. Moving that right and responsibility away from parents and towards DC bureaucrats is a really awful way to try and keep minors safe online, and a really concerning move in the world of online free speech, and represents a real risk for censorship and a loss of that free speech that we've been experiencing.
You know what's interesting about it is it's yet again the government coming in and mandating something that parents should be demanding from the social media giants themselves. So rather than having legislation, it should be that parents are saying, you know what, we're not going to buy cell phones for kids under the age of 18. We're not going to provide access to TikTok and Instagram. We're not going to do it until these social media giants actually prove to us that these sites are safe. One indicator that the social media giants know how unsafe their platforms is that most of the CEOs of this company don't allow their children to access social media. Knowing that, we as parents are kind of saying it's not good enough for Mark Zuckerberg's kids, but it's good enough for my kids. I can see being on it as an adult, but kids should be protected, and we need that to come from the private sector. Now, I'm not against the government, but I also feel like we've given too much of our decision making power, like the ideas that we would otherwise implement on our own if our government wasn't so big. We've given that over to government. NetChoice is an amazing organization. Tell everyone how to find out more about what you do.
So we have a great website at netchoice.org, and you can also find us on X, on Facebook, on Instagram. We try to get to all of those places that we can, and really are putting out that message of free speech and free enterprise for the internet.
Thank you so much for being with us and for joining us on the program today. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, and that was Rob Winterton, Director of Public Affairs at NetChoice. Coming up after this